Ayo, let's spark a match. Today we're going to go back to September 1987 for Ric Flair versus Ron Garvin from Detroit, Michigan. In late 1983, Jim Crockett Promotions had brought in Dusty Rhodes to be the booker, which in today's terms would be head of creative. But, and when they did that, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes had set off on a damn near 3-year rivalry that changed the entire professional wrestling business. A lot of what we see today is a direct result of the Ric Flair-Dusty Rhodes rivalry. But man, by late 86, the rose had totally fallen off, or the bloom had totally fallen off the rose of that Ric Flair-Dusty Rhodes rivalry. A bunch of fuck finishes known as the Dusty finish, where it would be one night it appears that maybe Dusty had won the belt, only for the next night for that decision to be reversed because of maybe the referee was down and Dusty had thrown Flair over the top rope or some bullshit. And you go to that well one too many times, the fans just kind of, okay. And by late 86, that had fallen off. But there was a successor in the waiting. A young man by the name of Magnum TA was set to take that mantle and be the next NWA World Heavyweight Champion. That was supposed to take place at Starrcade 86. However, in October of 86, I think it was, about 2 months out from Starrcade maybe, Magnum TA was in a car accident that paralyzed him to this very day. So, with Magnum TA no longer being an option, Dusty Rhodes and Jim Crockett Promotions were set to scramble. They tried to plug in Nikita Koloff real quick, but Nikita wasn't ready for that role. They went into a brief spring 1987 rivalry with the very critically acclaimed rivalry with Barry Windham. Him and Windham had some awesome matches. And why Windham wasn't the subject of what we're getting ready to talk about, why he wasn't put in the place of that, is something I kind of wonder about sometimes. But they had plans for Barry. He would become a horseman later on. But I don't think that was the plan then. I exactly to this day don't know why Barry wasn't in the position that Ron Garvin was in the match we're getting ready to talk about. But so the rivalry with Windham went through the spring, and then in the summer you start getting gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, perennial mid-carder, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, challenging Flair throughout the summer of 87 during the Great American Bash Tour. That rivalry started with Flair trying to hit on Jimmy Garvin's wife, Precious. But along the way came Jimmy Garvin's brother, also perennial mid-carder Ron Garvin. So with the NWA having Starrcade 87 coming up very, very shortly, and this is going to be their very first pay-per-view, because the previous Starrcades they had run closed circuit throughout the South. Closed circuit is where you can't watch it at home. You got to go to a theater and watch it where they're doing a closed circuit satellite. But Starrcade 87 was going to be Jim Crockett's very first pay-per-view. It was good. It was scheduled to be a lot more successful than it was, but along came Vince McMahon And that's another story for another day. But with Starrcade looming and this being their very first pay-per-view to a national audience, they wanted to showcase their crown jewel, Ric Flair. And no better way to showcase their crown jewel, Ric Flair, than to have Ric Flair winning the World Heavyweight title at Starrcade. But the problem is, Ric Flair was already the World Heavyweight Champion. So, they came up with an idea. They were going to put the World Heavyweight title on perennial mid-carder Ron Garvin. Now, this is not a knock on Ron Garvin. Ron Garvin was a beast. But Ron, he had very little charisma. He couldn't really cut a promo. And, you know, I mean, fans appreciated, like, his hard-hitting matches. But Ron Garvin wasn't that guy, man. But they did take advantage of the opportunity. And, man, Ric Flair and Ron Garvin proceeded to have some of the most brutal, hard-hitting matches to ever be seen in the United States up to that point on a mainstream level. These things were violent, they were vicious, they were bloody. You had never seen Ric Flair work like this. Never. I mean, the feud with Dusty was violent. The feud later on in '89 with Terry Funk was violent. But man, to this day, you had never seen Ric Flair work the way he did with Ron. Like, he was like, bro, he was getting beat the fuck down. Like, beaten down. And he was laying it in on Garvin, too. I mean, the matches were just brutal. And the one from Detroit is especially brutal. Like, the match in Detroit were, I normally don't tell you how these things end because I want you to go watch them. But this match in Detroit was how they got the belt off of Flair. It's like, okay, how are we going to get Flair in a position to win a world title at Starrcade? Let's just take the belt off of him and put it on Ron Garvin in Detroit. Which, like, you know, okay, but then, like, they didn't really have Ron Garvin defend the title on TV. He was almost a non-factor on the television shows at all. So it was like he was just there. And I just feel like they could have gotten more out of it than they did. But what they did get out of it in ring, I mean, for as much as it lacked, like, what's the creative? As much as it lacked, God, I hate that fucking word, though, I really do. But as much as it lacked creative, it did not lack in match quality. Ric Flair, during these matches, had to have Neosporin put on his chest on a daily basis for over a year. Because Ron Garvin was chopping this man's chest so fucking hard, he was taking off layers of skin with that shit. It was insane. And I've just been sitting here breaking up a bud with my fingers, and I have no idea why when I'm sitting here with this grinder in my fucking hands. Good grief, have mercy. Man. But, the Starrcade 87 match, where Flair won the belt back, which on paper looked like a good card, but that Chicago crowd just was not in. Chicago had no idea. Okay, look, here's the thing. Starrcade had always been a Greensboro, North Carolina event. It was their crown jewel event. From 1983 up until 1986, those years right there, Starrcade was in Greensboro. Well, and trying to compete with Vince McMahon and trying to move way faster than they should have and move way further than they should have, Jim Crockett Promotions decides that they're going to put their showcase event in Chicago. Because nobody knew where the fuck Greensboro was. That was their thinking. That was their thinking. Is nobody knows where Greensboro, North Carolina is. We'll put it in Chicago. People know Chicago. Well, you just screwed your entire loyal fan base of fucking Greensboro that had been coming to your shows since the late 1930s. You just totally fucking negated them. Good job. They never got Greensboro back, by the way. Never got it back the same. I mean, some people would still go, but like in March of 87, they did a show that there were 17,000 people there. March of 88, for the very, very highly acclaimed Clash of the Champions 1, where the main event was Sting and Ric Flair, 6,000 people in attendance. 6,000. They lost Greensboro after that. And to boot it off, they were projecting 200 cable companies worldwide, or 200 cable companies nationwide to carry Starrcade 87. Well, coming off the success of WrestleMania 3, Vince McMahon went and told the cable companies, look, if you air Jim Crockett Promotions pay-per-view, you will not have access to WrestleMania 4. We will cut you off. I mean, not knowing if the cable providers would have told him to go piss up a rope, it's not like he was going to deny him anyways, because that's money off his table. It was a fucking bluff, man. And they bought it. They fell for it, totally. So he gave them Survivor Series. Competition to Starrcade 87 is that's how we got the Survivor Series. They ran the very first Survivor Series from right here in Cleveland, Ohio, the same day that Jim Crockett Promotions was running Starrcade 87 from Chicago. And out of the 200 cable providers that they had lined up to run this Starrcade event, it was five cable companies ran it. Out of the 200 they had projected, running at $19.95 a pop, expecting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of viewers to buy this event, it was only bought by a handful of people, and their total gross was $80,000 when they were projecting millions. This is one of the direct moves that Jim Crockett Promotions got shut down and bought by Ted Turner less than a year later. That's how we got WCW. It was Jim Crockett Promotions, and through a bunch of overspending and moving way too fast and moving in areas they did not know about and running with a very small business structure, Vince ate them alive, man. But yeah, this is all due to, we were talking about Ron Garvin and Ric Flair. But yeah, that was the main event of Starrcade 87, was the rematch of Ron Garvin and Ric Flair, with Ron Garvin coming in as the champion and Ric Flair challenging. So when they get to Chicago, Ron Garvin gets booed out of the building, man. I mean, you're going to Chicago, bright lights, big city, nature, boy, woo! Who do you think Chicago was going for, man? Some dude they ain't never really ever fucking heard of? Or Ric Flair? Come on. It was a horrible decision. But the two matches we got out of it were great. For as bad as like everything surrounding this was, but the two matches we got were awesome. Go check out. Actually, I'm gonna have you check out two matches today. What you're going to do is first you're going to go look at Ron Garvin versus Ric Flair from Detroit, Michigan, September 1987. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to go check out Ric Flair versus Ron Garvin from Starrcade in November of 1987. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to twist this little spliff up right here. Yeah, I know, I've seen this. Totally is not a prepared video, man. I just got the idea in my head about this match. Like I said, I'll never write shit down. It's obvious I'll never write shit down. I'm so totally underprepared for all this bullshit. But I don't care. I'm just coming to talk to the people. All right, let's roll. Let's burn this bad boy. Let's go back to September 1987, and then let's go to November 1987. Let's go check out some hard-hitting wrestling, y'all. Hit that like button, comment, subscribe. Y'all have a good night. Ric Flair, Ron Garvin, September 1987, Detroit, Michigan. Ron Garvin, Ric Flair, Starrcade, 1987. Go check out those two matches.